Boss Brief, a strategic guide on how not to be an asshole at work. You'll learn about bad bosses, how they can be detected and handled, as well as how to tell if you happen to be one. Join an executive and an executive coach, both artists working in marketing and advertising from over 2 decades, who are here to offer you the ultimate guide on how to navigate any employment landscape. Here are your hosts, Eugene S. Robinson and Stephanie Peirolo.
Welcome to the Bad Boss Brief. I'm Stephanie Peirolo.
I'm Eugene S. Robinson.
And today we are going to talk about feuds at work.
Ooh, I've got a few of those.
I thought you might.
Contentious. Yeah, okay.
And we don't want to talk about just conflict at work, right? So the parameters in which we're thinking about feuds today are 2 people or 2 groups who have an intractable conflict that isn't necessarily connected to bad behavior on either part, right? So this isn't a situation where, X did something egregious to Y and HR got involved. No. These are just groups or individuals who cannot stand one another. And tell me about one of your feuds.
Groups or individuals? Well, I would have to say that there was a guy at Apple who was let's think about it the way Apple thinks about it. You have A-listers at Apple, and then you have B-team players, and this guy was B-team adjacent to A-list, was like right at the top of the B-team. Hadn't really done anything magnificent, but people in general, Jim, were impressed with his efforts. But in the presence of an actual A-lister, he got really weird and kind of weirdly corporate and competitive and in an unhealthy corporate way, which was sort of antithetical at the time to how business was done at Apple, like backbiting, back sniping, sneaky kind of. This guy would actively avoid he would plan his route around the Apple complex specifically to avoid Steve Jobs, because there's famous stories about Steve Jobs getting in an elevator with somebody and saying, "What do you do?" and the person not being able to coherently explain what they did by the time the elevator hit wherever they were going, and that person being fired. I don't know how true those were, but he assiduously avoided, rather than up his game, just avoided Jobs in the complex. And that I witnessed directly. But rather than try to up the level of his accomplishments and achievements, his involvement with the group, he spent more of his time trying to pull down burgeoning A-listers, which was nettlesome for those burgeoning A-listers.
And so was that the source of your feud with him?
The source of the feud was, his repeated attempts to undercut the efforts. And keep in mind, my efforts at Apple they had brought in a succession, maybe 4 before me, of marketing people. And this would be under the guy from Pepsi, who was the CEO before Jobs returned. John, his last name I can't remember. So he had a few administrations to kind of mess with, but they had brought in 4 marketing folks who, what they tried to do, which is what marketing people should do, is, figure out who the stakeholders are, get meetings together, come up with a working plan, a marching plan, and get something done. But everybody was so individual contributory, to make up a phrase at Apple, that was getting nowhere, right? So they were having these meetings and nothing was getting done. And I came in and they said, well, you should probably meet with the various groups. And I sent out an email and said, this is who I am, what I'm here to do. Let's meet. And people were like, yeah, sure. And I go, you know what? I don't really need them, right? The idea of my job, my KPI here is to make Apple cool again. And I could do that without them. Frank Kozik, dearly departed Frank Kozik, underground artist of major note, was one of the first people I covered because he's an evangelist, unknown to people at Apple at the time. They had no idea that he was, but I knew, and did a big piece on him and had five new articles a week, every week. So by the time I'd been there a month, we had 20, and people had started to notice, specifically Steve. And when everybody in the group found out, oh, wow, Steve sent an email to the group that we were doing great stuff, that's the point at which the feud started.
Huh.
Before then, he was like, that's probably going to be another marketing guy who can't get anything done. But at that point, after the first month, the dude was like, no, I can't have this.
And so what kind of things would he do? Do you remember?
Just everything that was backhanded and unhelpful. They sent me to Zurich to interview the band Yellow. And I'd gotten back to the hotel after having spent, several hours, interviewing these guys and then transcribing tape and then, get back to the hotel. And I had to fly out. It was a short trip. They didn't spend any money on this. It flew me over. They were going to fly me back. And I just said, I'm going to check my email. And I checked my email and it was like, well, since Eugene is not here, you've contextualized this in a way to make me seem like a slacker. I'm not off on vacation. I'm not touring. I'm not at home drunk. I'm at work in Zurich. And so stuff like that, and I responded to that immediately. I said, it's very much what I just said now. I'm at work in Zurich. And I'm available like now by email or phone. And there's no reason at all that what you're saying didn't get done because of my efforts. Non-performance is not my responsibility in this instance because I've given everything that you wanted. So I don't appreciate your back channel kind of attack. I said those words exactly. Mm-hmm. And of course, he wasn't used to that kind of direct talk, didn't expect it. And that kind of stuff dies in the sunlight. So he sort of left me alone at that point, except for odd sniper hits every now and then. But his major broadside, figuring that I wouldn't have the subtlety or grace to kind of understand what was being said, that stopped. That stopped at that point. Well, because I CC'd everybody. It's like, you're not going to beat up on me in private. We're dotted line to each other. You have no basis for this,
Well, and I think that is one of the things that characterizes feuds that I've seen is just a level of sort of relentless pettiness.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? It's petty. It's not anything. And I think that's one of the challenges is that if you respond to someone who continues to barrage you with those kind of, like small things, it can seem as if you are small-minded. If you say, well, he said this or, different types of examples. And that's part of the insidiousness of that sort of feud behavior. And so I've seen it with individuals. I've also seen it with groups, right? Mm-hmm. So having spent a lot of time in advertising, there are sometimes just natural tensions between groups, right? So account people who are tasked with largely managing the relationship with the clients and then with all the other stakeholders around the clients, making sure the creatives are happy, all of those things are often at odds with project management, whose job it is to make sure that things get done on time, on budget. And sometimes you can't adhere to deadlines and make everybody involved happy. Right. I remember a creative, we were working on a deadline because we had an RFP, request for a proposal. And if you got it in late, you weren't considered. And that was however many millions out the door. And he always would push things. And I remember him calling me from a plane and screaming at me because I had just informed him of the reality that this is actually due at this time, which means you have to get your stuff to me by at least an hour beforehand so I can make sure that it's proofread. Right. So there are some circumstances where there's a natural tension between departments. And if you can just name it, I've done that as a consultant, come in and been like, look, account people, you are going to have tension with project management, right? Everybody's going to have tension with finance. Like some of these things are natural. I think the challenge with feuds is when it goes beyond, it metastasizes. Right. And it's so that every meeting is a festival of pettiness. Every interaction, every email is, CC everybody and, kind of snide references. And I think those things can be really destructive. And what ends up happening is that managers, like all the way up to CEO, they don't want to mess with that stuff.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It's just, it's one of those management headaches where you really are like, can you two just sort this out, whether it's teams or whether it's individuals?
Yep.
Have you ever managed people who have been feuding?
I have. When I was doing Code Magazine in Los Angeles, which I've made mention of on past shows, and I've had people who were feuding, and in some cases, it was intractable. A creative director and a style editor at loggerheads. And there was, remember I was in the office 3 days a week, and I was splitting the rest of my time at Apple. Actually, I was doing 2 jobs at once. And so when I was out of the office, and I would switch, sometimes I'd be 3 days a week at Apple and just 2 days a week at the magazine. But when I was not there was screaming. They were throwing things at. It was weirding everybody out. And I could see, to use family terms, that what was really needed was a dad. And I came in and I said, for this to work for me, I need to have peace and quiet, much like it's a very dad argument in this household. And if it doesn't, I'm going to have to separate you guys. And they go, separate? And I go, yes, one of you will have to go. And they kind of, I said it the way I just said it now. So there was a possibility that you thought that I was being amusing. But that's not what happened. I was very serious, and it continued. And I had to let one of the people go.
How did you decide which one to let go if they're both fighting?
I had made a pick about who I thought the aggressor was. Mm-hmm. And also the aggressor was the one who was back channeling stuff I didn't like. You got a problem with me, you don't go to the VP, you come to me. And what he hadn't realized is that the VP had loved me. So she was, she would come to me and say, well, Matt said, and I'd be like, okay, Matt, so it's like, out of the people who I can trust, one or the other, it's not Matt, So, so somebody had actually told him that I was going to lay him off before I did so. And I hadn't told anybody I was going to do this. But that's when I realized that despite the fact that at Flint, all of the executive doors were bulletproof steel core because of his accident, was totally paranoid. They were not soundproof. So the rumor, either through a phone call that I'd made that somebody eavesdropped on, but the rumor had spread so that when I finally called the guy in, he said, hey, I just want to let you know I'm leaving. So he quit before I could fire him, which it was immaterial to me. I'm glad it looks better for you that way. Okay. So,
well, what I was looking at, since, we like to have some advice, is what do you do if you're the one in the feud? Right? And so what I was thinking about is usually I've had lots of people who don't like me or try to undercut me. But I'm mostly like, oh, that's how you're going to do. I try not to get involved. Right. But there was one time where I was brought into a company, and the guy that I was working with just didn't like me out of the gate, and I couldn't figure out why. And come to find out later that I took his job and they never told me. They never told him that, Stephanie's coming in and she's replacing a large component of what it is that you do. So I was not set up for success in that circumstance.
Right.
But there was a constant tension, and I bought into it, right? Because I'm like, oh, okay, like white guy mansplaining me. It was like hitting all of my things, right? So that's what I was looking at. I was thinking about that example. And so here are a couple of things that I would invite people to think about if they're in a feud. The first is understand the risk that this can do to your career.
Yeah.
Right? Exactly what you just said. Like managers, they don't want to deal with it. They want you to sort it out. And so
because work is not getting done.
Exactly.
We're talking about this. 3 people are not working. So
exactly. So the first thing is just step out. Stop participating. Right? Stop talking about it. Certainly don't talk about it at work. Just stop participating. And I think sometimes people forget, I was thinking today, it's been a number of years since I've had a cigarette, but quitting smoking is hard because you have to, at least initially, 25 times a day, want to do something and then stop yourself doing it. Right? It's the same thing when you have a feud. You will want to respond with a snarky email, say make the crass observation, talk over someone in a meeting. You will have a desire to do these things, learn some restraint, right? And just stop participating in it.
Okay, what do you say then to a person who's involved in a feud, an existential feud, where the other person will not stop until you're gone from the company? In other words, you don't. It's like prison where you don't really have. If you choose not to feud with this person, you are risking being, extirpated from this professional setting. So
I would first, that is I feel like I've been in those circumstances before.
Mm-hmm.
What I question now looking back is, was that just a story I was telling myself?
Yeah.
Right? Because it's dog eat dog. That's capitalism, right? And the idea of like, if someone is consistently having bad behavior towards you and you are not participating, adults in the room are going to see that. And they are going to understand who has the emotional maturity and the restraint to participate in a corporate environment, right? Like work karma doesn't take that long to come around, right? And I think, again, part of the feud idea is that these are not HR offenses, right? If somebody is really attacking you, if their objective is to demoralize you so completely that you leave the building, generally that involves an HR violation, right? So I think we want to put that aside. And the other thing is then what I tried to do with this guy was to really reframe the narrative, right? What is the story that I'm telling myself? The story that I often hear from clients is they think that the person that I'm feuding with is doing something at me. Right? He's trying to get rid of me. He's trying to do this. There's all these narratives, right? And what I always suggest to my clients is whatever people do makes sense to them. Get curious about why this behavior makes sense to this man. Right? Why does this man, people don't think that much about us, right? What is it that he's doing? And it's usually fear. People are afraid they're going to lose something that they have, or that they're not going to get something that they think that they need or want. Right. And so he's afraid, right? I just happen to be in the way of that. So the first thing is to like try to get curious about what it is that this person might be doing. And then I think I call it unbraiding. It's look at your side of the street, right? So a lot of times what'll happen, and I've seen this with friends, I've done it myself, I've seen it with clients, they'll start talking to me about a conflict at work. And I'll realize, wait a minute, that sounds like their father. Or didn't they go through something similar with their ex during the divorce?
Yeah.
And a lot of times we don't see what's layered on top of it. Right. And so, for me, I've had a really extensive history with sexual harassment. Right. So if I feel something coming at me and I'm telling myself a story that it's gendered, I'm going to have a whole bunch of energy around that. And if I unbraid this and think, maybe talk to another friend who's also a woman and say, are you getting a gendered vibe? And my friend's like, I'm not seeing that. Then I need to look at what is it that this is bringing up for me that is not about this circumstance. Then the next thing is you need to let go of being right. Right. So there's a phrase I've heard a bunch of times, which is, would you rather be right or be happy?
Yeah.
And I always answer the same way, which is I'd rather be right.
Yeah, me too. I was going to say the same thing, man.
However,
I'm a Virgo. Yeah. So,
And so, but I think it's important to recognize that nobody else in the work environment cares whether we are right or not. Right? When these feuds go on, it doesn't matter if you have right on your side. It doesn't matter. They just want it to stop. They just want it to go away. So let go of that. And then I think the last thing is to really try to develop some compassion for this person. So, whatever it is, right? Some people have a spiritual practice. The Buddhists have a practice called metta, M-E-T-T-A, which is, if you're curious, look it up online. It's a prayer where you have a good intention for yourself, a loved one, a neutral person, and then the person you can't stand. Right. And so I started doing that as I would drive to work at a certain part of my commute. I would have a good intention for this man. Even though I was not feeling it, I would try to have a good intention for him. And then I got to work and I over time, I found out two things. One, I saw how he interacted with his family and I realized he was he was a good dad and he was a good husband and he was really devoted to his family. So I'm like, okay, not a lot of guys in advertising have that profile. So I was like, okay, check. And then I found out accidentally that he had some pretty serious health issues and he was in almost chronic pain.
Oh, yeah.
And I had this thought of like, this guy he's the breadwinner, right? His wife is staying home with the little kids. He's in chronic pain. What must that be like? And I realized that the shortness of temper, what I had interpreted as his bad attitude towards me, I was like, what if that is like screaming pain?
Yeah.
And it just shifted for me. And so but it took months. It took months. And what ended up happening,
the question is he a recipient, as a recipient of the change in your attitude? Was it your perception that he responded positively to
absolutely,
it?
it was 180. I mean, our dynamic completely changed, and we never actually even talked about it. Right? We didn't say, we didn't ever have any heart to heart. There was no like, let's air our whatever. It was just, I changed in my vibe towards him, and he changed it in his vibe towards me, which is, I mean, again, not surprising. I am, a tall woman with a lot of energy. I'm stalking around the office, hating his guts. Yeah. Obviously there's a certain affect that I'm bringing. And when I stop bringing that, then he changed. And, this was many, many years ago. I have run into him at social events. I am genuinely happy to see him. His career he's been very successful. All of that's water under the bridge. And so it is possible, right? Yeah. It is possible to do. And I think it's also really imperative to bring some of these things to bear. And then I think that the last thing I would say is, if you are a boss and you are in a circumstance where two people that work for you who are peers are feuding, one, send them a copy of this and make them listen to it and invite them to do all of these things. But I think what's really important, as long as, again, there's no HR behavior, this is not a sexual harassment, racism, any of that situation, insist that they speak with one another.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, it's funny you should say that. I had one thing when I was at a magazine, and I mentioned the anecdote, which is the guy standing in my door kind of issuing an edict that I should do something. Me saying that our common boss, because we were a dotted line, didn't sign off on that. And the guy still at me. And finally I said, I'm not doing it. What are you going to do? Beat me up? And you would think that was a nadir, that was like the low. And in fact, it actually was, because we had a business, a conference to do later. I get to the hotel. Everybody had gotten there before me. I was, for some reason, had an interview and had to show up late. And they screwed up my room. Right as dude was walking through the lobby, and he stopped and heard me say, and I just said, you know what? I don't want to argue. I'll sleep in this couch here in the lobby of the hotel. And he was like, hey, Eugene, I got they got a double bed in my room. It's sweet. You can, and I was like, I just thought that was just such a basically decent thing to do, given that we'd had this troubled relationship. So I said, cool. So we go up to the room, and we actually just talked like two roommates about to go to bed, because it was fairly late, like maybe 10 o'clock or something. And we just talked until bedtime and went to sleep. Completely changed the tone and the timbre of we became friends.
Yep.
Like 2 hours of conversation, just normal guy. I found out that he was in a band too, and we knew some of the same people. It was really effortless and pretty phenomenal.
And I think being mindful of there's going to be ruptures in any relationship. It's how do you repair the rupture? And really just basic human kindness, right? Bringing somebody a sandwich if you're working late, or asking after a sick kid, or, just something. It can be a really small gesture, can really turn things around.
Yeah.
Do you have a fire me?
Yeah. I'm sorry. I don't know why I apologize for these things, but it just seems like I'm apologizing not to the person who the fire me is about, but everybody that's got to deal with this person. And I'm going to go straight to one of your temporarily local resident at this point, Jeff Bezos. It's like, listen, I'm glad you discovered love late in life. That's great. I don't want to see pictures of you and your girlfriend on your speedboat as you contemplate your move to Florida, when right as the holiday season is kicking off, there are indications that you're going to lay off, not a sizable portion, but enough people for me to be bothered you're going to be on a ship enjoying yourself, while these people are like, yo, Christmas is in a couple of months, Hanukkah's in a couple of months. What? I'm laid off. And, I found this out in the same way that everybody else found it out, through the newspapers. So they're saying layoffs are coming. They don't even, it's the reason. Was it the reason for the season? How about no surprise and dread? How about that? Because they haven't announced. They've announced they're going to be layoffs. They haven't announced who's getting laid off. But he's happy, and he's shirtless and on a boat with his fiance and having a great time. That's good. Second richest man in the world. That's really fantastic. But, a lot of people right now are going to have crap holiday seasons. And even if you don't announce until January, you've ruined the entire season. So this is a 101 bad boss not do list. They even have days when they're supposed to fire people, right? There are certain days, there's some kind of lore that, I can't remember what it is, that you don't fire them at the beginning of the week, or maybe you fire them at the end of the week. So that
end of the week and end of the quarter.
End of the week, end of the quarter, correct. So that they, if for whatever reason, one is financial and one is, they have the weekend to kind of adjust, and they don't brood over it through the whole week and come back and shoot the place up. But this was ham-handed. And you could say, well, he can't control his public image. The picture of, I'm pretty sure he can, a picture taken from about 4 feet away of her sitting on his lap on their boat. I think you pretty much can control that. It's 4 feet. My arm's about 3 feet long. You could control that, So I don't know. It seems hard-hearted to me.
Well, and there was that leaked email that you sent over that was sent out to the games division. They laid off a bunch of people in games. Yeah. And there was this great quote. It says, this is from the internal Amazon email. It never feels good to say goodbye to colleagues.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's like saying it never feels good to have one of those tags on the inside of your shirt, scratching your neck. It's like, no. Yeah. That's not, and that kind of like, well, it's never easy. It's going to be easy for whoever is the boss of that particular division. He still has a job. He doesn't have to worry about how he's going to, get health insurance. And what are they all supposed to do? Go on Amazon's like new $9 a month and you can get your healthcare online situation. And that was the thing that I just thought was also another unnecessary misstep, right? That this email is going to get leaked. So first of all, why are you sending out as an email? It's going to immediately, I think it went to the street. And then, it never feels good to say goodbye to colleagues. If I was looking at that, I'm not even a PR person. I'm not even a crisis communication person. I could look at that and be like, you're not going to want to say that when they're getting laid off, like the week before Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
Right. And I think the challenge too, one of the things is that, like I have friends that I'm talking to in, who work in tech in Seattle. They're hiring people and they're talking to candidates who have been really quality candidates who have been out of work since January.
Yep.
Applying to everything. Can't get jobs. Like it is not a small thing to be laid off in this market at this time and to have that cavalier response.
Did you see that guy who set an AI program to send out his resumes everywhere? And he sent out literally like 5,000 resumes. Got 7 interviews out of them and no job offers. So, and this is AI talking to AI, right? I've applied to a job and they said, you have a choice, they say in the application. AI can vet your application or a real human can. You won't be punished for how you choose, but it's up to you. And so I declined to have AI, AI vet me. I would rather have a person vet me and say, hell no, we don't want you here, than a computer going, these words don't seem like they're quite the right words we need for the job. Who knows? No. But it's very strange. And this guy was like a qualified, engineers I don't think are having a hard time, but I think this guy was a software engineer, which I thought to be fairly incredible.
And given, normally I try not to make like comments about people's physical appearance, but, given the spirit of Jeff Bezos being the fire me guy today, I was in an elevator with Jeff Bezos. Right there.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
But this is before he bulked up. A very small man, kind of like over in the corner, not really having eye contact with anybody. I remember, and this was, again, many years ago, but he was still Jeff Bezos, even then. Yep. And I remember thinking like, wow, he is so dramatically unprepossessing in person that if I wasn't this close to him, I would not have assumed that he would be he would be the Jeff Bezos that he is. And of course, now he has shoulders, but you can't do anything about the short guy.
They've started lengthening people's leg bones, which increases your height, but it makes you like Mr. Glass in that movie. You can't, at that point when you choose to have the surgery, your days of playing pickup basketball or soccer, they're done. They're done.
That's not great. Yeah. All right. Well, that's all we've got time for today. If you have any ideas of future episodes that you'd like us to do, or if you have any questions, which we will answer on our Sub Rosa section, which is our advice podcast, get in touch at WTF@badbossbrief.com. That's WTF@badbossbrief.com. And we will see you in a couple weeks. Thanks.
Adios.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of the Bad Boss Brief podcast with your hosts, Eugene S. Robinson and Stephanie Peirolo. You can check out more of their work by visiting consigliera.substack.com for Stephanie and eugenesrobinson.substack.com for Eugene. You can also find Eugene at Mr. Sleep 3, that's number 3, on Instagram. Reach out with your questions, concerns, work case situations, or suggestions to us at WTF@badbossbrief.com. We personally answer every submission. Be sure to join us at badbossbrief.substack.com every other Wednesday for episodes of Bad Boss Brief and every single week for our Sub Rosa shorts, so you can gain further insights into your workplace environments. Until next time, don't be an asshole at work.